to a show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats podcast. Don't know why I say it like that, but hey, it's what I do. So for this episode, I want to welcome back returning guests to the podcast, and we stay actively in touch through the DMs. So I like to say friend.
Actively in touch, Jonte. We're talking almost every day.
Yeah, I don't know how to word those things sometimes. I'm just like, we talk here and there. Like, dude, like we message daily. Like, oh, okay, yeah, that too. But
hey, there's just so much good stuff to get out there. Like, I feel bad blowing you up sometimes, but then I'm like, man, Dante would love seeing this.
Dude, no, like there's a lot of good content that you send over. I'm just like, okay, I appreciate that. I like this. I like this. Whereas the stuff that I would send is like. Like dick and fart jokes. It's like, oh, like, man, let me do my science here and pick which friends will really be into this and what friends will be into that. But listeners, I want to welcome back to the podcast, Mr. David Riedman. What's up, David? How you feeling, my friend?
Hey, feeling good, Dante. We were talking last time. It was middle of winter, freezing. Football was still going on, and then next thing you know, it's the middle of June. Where is this year going? It's crazy. A lot has gone on in the last few months. Yes, actually, it's funny because here in Maryland, like last week, it was cold. It was like 60 degrees. We're like, yo, what is going on, dude? Like, we're going into June, and then June 1st hit, and we're like, okay, chill. Like, you gotta ease us into this heat. You can't just go from 60 to 90, without warning. So. Here we are, though, and last time we talked, I was using my pool as a cold plunge after class, and now it's 98 degrees outside. So, yeah, a couple months change, and everything is totally different.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of how the flow goes. You just never know what's going to happen, whether it be worldly. One day we're talking about one thing, the next thing is like that's old news. Everything moves so fast, though. So who knows? But I wanted to sit down and talk with you again. I always want to have you on. It's like there are times I'm like, I want to have David on, but I also, it's like, I don't want to just like kind of like, hey, come on. And then we're sitting here like, just like, so, read any good books lately? Like I saw some good movies. It's like, I like to have purpose for the episode. And you've actually sent over some articles from your Substack to me. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is perfect timing because, these are things that I'd been kind of thinking about and discussing with friends lately. And, now that I've read your articles and, know that it's kind of like it's there with you right now as well. It's like, this is a perfect time to have the conversation. So I want to talk about, so the articles that David has sent over, the initial one was talking about, what to expect when you are starting jiu-jitsu, like you're brand new to it. And I like that a whole lot because I don't know how most folks stumbled into jiu-jitsu, but when I walked in, I was just like, I didn't have a gi for like a month. Like, but they kept letting me show up. They're just like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Then they choked me with my shirt. And I was like, I don't think that's okay. That's probably not fine at all. I should get a gi. They're probably mad. So, it's always on my mind. I think about that day quite often. But David, for you with the this set of articles, what kind of I guess inspired you to put this out there and really educate and make people aware of what they could and should be prepared for?
Yeah, this actually came out of an episode of our mutual friend Laura's podcast, the BJJ Babes. I was listening to that. She had a woman on. I can't remember what her name was, but she told this story about how she got into no-gi at a gym, and she went online and she bought some rash guards and shorts and things, and she really liked the black and red one, and she really liked the purple one, and she bought all this stuff. And she had no idea that it was ranked gear that corresponded to something. And she talked about first how foolish she felt being there at the gym, projecting something that she didn't even understand was happening, but then also what a waste of money it was for a brand new student to buy a bunch of really cool gear and then have it be things that she wasn't even able to use. So I think that, combined with, I made the tough decision over the last few months to switch to a new academy. That's something that I had never done in my whole jiu-jitsu life over the last 16 years. I've only switched gyms when I was moving, but I made the decision to switch gyms. The new one is huge, and it's got a big churn of students coming through. So hearing that story on Laura's podcast, and then seeing that almost every class there's somebody coming in for a trial class, I wanted to put something out there to be a guide for somebody to, I think, avoid a lot of the common pitfalls that'll either have somebody be unprepared, somebody to not know what they're walking into, or somebody to unknowingly embarrass themselves when they're coming in for their first day.
That's super important. I think I don't know, like for me going in and then you changing academies too. I mean, you changing academies, you're already you're in the know, at least on the broader spectrum of what to do. But, each academy has its own culture and little in-house rules themselves. But I think just as an overall, the article was great because, there are like the whole shoes thing. And even to this day, like people who have been trained for years, they don't go in the bathroom without shoes. Everybody knows that's a no-no. But I see folks walking around off the mats without shoes on. I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? Because you got to think, people are coming from outside. People just came out of the bathroom. They're walking in that same space. And now you just walked in that space. It's no different. So, little things like that, bringing flip-flops.
Well, that's the difference between somebody feeling embarrassed and like they don't fit in from the very second that they get to the gym for their very first class, or somebody feeling like they're prepared and ready and they know what to do. I'm thinking about it, a person who was there for a trial class in the last couple of weeks, and they had just come from work. And so they had, khakis and dress shoes and so on and nothing else. And they're like, do I walk around in socks? When do I take my socks off? I've got these, dress socks. This is weird. I'm not going to get off the mat and put my dress shoes on. So instantly this person feels like they don't fit in. They don't belong. They're thinking about how they weren't ready for this one little thing. And, it takes a lot of courage for somebody to go into a jiu-jitsu academy for the first time. Orlando BJJ, where I train now, is this enormous gym where the mat is like the size of a basketball court. There's a full-size octagon. There's this whole weight training area. There's a full-size boxing ring. There are all these hanging bags. People are kickboxing and MMA fighting, and there are classes going on. Like, you walk into that environment for the first time, that's a very intimidating place to be already. And if then the very first thing that happens is you realize that you don't even have the flip-flops that you need to walk around properly, you're probably going to think, I don't even belong here. And instead of having fun and enjoying your first class, you're just thinking about what you don't know.
Yeah, the first time that I trained, I went in and did a trial with a friend at his gym out in Columbia, Maryland. And I knew nothing. And I remember I was that guy. I went into the bathroom with those shoes because I was like, well, what do I do? I didn't have flip-flops or anything. And I was like, I stepped off the mat, went into the bathroom because I paused for a minute because I started going through this thing. I was like, it would be gross to go in there barefooted. But we're all moving around barefooted. So I don't know what to do. Do I put my shoes back on? I just ran in the bathroom, came out, washed my hands, came out. And then as I'm coming back onto that, no one stopped me. No one corrected me. No one said anything. But I have a whole different, later viewpoint after I kind of really sat and thought about it, about the gym. It's not a bad thing. It's just observation about the gym that I noticed. But nobody.
And I think back to my first class and how embarrassing that was. And luckily I kept going. So it was February in Washington, D.C. This was 2009, but you're from DC and Baltimore. Like, it is cold in February.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the gym the same way that I would dress for Washington Sports Club: tennis shoes, sweatpants. These are cotton sweatpants because it's 2009. Like, we didn't have all the cool Under Armour tights everybody's wearing now. So cotton's like probably Champion cotton sweatpants, cotton t-shirt, sweatshirt over that. And then I go inside and there's, the gi class is getting started. So everybody's wearing, long sleeves and long pants. So I think I need to do this class with my sweatshirt, and sweatpants on too. And it got warm in there quick. So I'm running around doing the warm up, and then I'm trying to do the technique, and I'm absolutely sweating through the sweatshirt. Like, it was such an uncomfortable experience. Not that the gi is, that much more comfortable when it's wet, but like a cotton shirt, cotton sweatpants, cotton hooded sweatshirt, absolutely awful. So I wanted to write this article to be what to expect in your first day, what to wear, what gear you need to bring, picking the right compression underwear for this, having a rash guard underneath, knowing whether it's going to be a gi or a no gi class, having your flip-flops, having a water bottle, knowing that when you get there, you might greet people, you might not greet people. You need to look around and kind of see what other people are doing. You're going to do a warm-up. You're going to do some techniques. You may spar. Maybe you'll watch the sparring. All of that lets somebody have a mental picture of what's going on. Because if you just show up, have no idea, you're unprepared, you don't have the right gear, after that 10-minute warm-up, you're probably thinking, I'm done with this. This is not for me. If you know everything that's happening and you're ready for it, then you're going to be able to kind of coast through a little better, is my hope.
Yeah, my second go round, when I ended up at Ivy League, where I trained for a while, I was a little bit better prepared in that ideal of like at least have the flip flops, So like the bathroom thing, like the barefoot in the bathroom thing hadn't been explained to me at this point yet, but I had already made up in my mind, I'm not going to the bathroom again with no shoes on. That there's something that's yucky about that. And then like, sure enough, it's like, hey, don't go in the bathroom without shoes on. That's gross. But yeah, I think everyone, I wish it was just some kind of like universal thing, like this article, just everybody sees it and it's like, hey, plaster this, all over the place, because it's super important. Because your first day in, you come in there, you goof up because you don't know. Now you might not return. Like, after that first trial class I had, the class was fine, but I didn't come back for jiu-jitsu until a year later. It wasn't anything with that school specifically. It was just like I felt kind of out of sorts. I felt weird because I was like, like that just didn't feel right.
Well, that's kind of like a crisis, I think, that we have in jiu-jitsu, is somebody has a level of interest to go try something for the first time. And a lot of things that you try for the first time, if you feel connected with it, the biggest barrier was the first step that you took through the door. Mm-hmm. But there's something wrong in jiu-jitsu where that's not the biggest barrier. The biggest barrier is getting somebody to come back a second or a third or a fourth time. I mean, kind of my rough estimate across all of the different gyms that I've trained in over my life is, if you have 100 people that take a trial class, I bet 50 of those, half of those people never come to a second class. And the people who do come to a second class or a third class, I bet it's only 1 out of that 50 that ultimately you're going to make it to a blue belt. So if you've got 100 people that potentially, we all love this sport. We want more people to do this sport. We want there to be more successful gyms out there. We want new students coming in because that gives us people to work with and to train with. If 1 out of 100 are sticking around for a year, that's not a problem with the people. That's a problem with the experience that they're having and the way that they're not believing that they're going to be able to fit in or do this.
Yeah, that's something I realized when I was still at Ivy League, my coach would have a few of us kind of meet up. If there's a new student coming in, I was one of those individuals that would work with the new students and kind of, especially if it's a trial, I'm with that person for the week, just to be the welcoming committee. If it's a male, sometimes females, but usually there's another female grappler that he would pair up with the females. But, more often than not, our job was to kind of make them feel comfortable, show them, if we're working on a more advanced move, we take that new person to the side and we're going to work on basic stuff, like the small things. And, one thing I was always, I just felt like I wanted to do with the people was like teach them how to, fall, because that's a big thing. You think about jiu-jitsu, you're going to be falling a lot. And if you don't know how to fall properly, it's intimidating and scary. So I would always kind of like have them sit down on their butts and just rock back and forth. Just rock back and forth, then kind of elevate a little bit, like kind of like to a low squat. I'll rock back, do that a few times and then get a little higher. And then, kind of going into the break fall stuff. Because I know, again, for me coming in, that was just, I'm like, all right, I only stuck around because at this point, I've done one trial. The second time out, I did it, and I was like, well, I'm gonna stick with this. I'm only doing this because I'm stubborn now. So, but you don't get that with a lot of folks, like you said. You might get one out of 50.
I've been talking to the brand new white belts about that too, because I think when you go into a class, you do the warm up. The warm up seems like a bunch of really weird moves, and they don't make a lot of sense until somebody explains the right mechanics of a hip escape, the right mechanics of a break fall, the way to do a shoulder roll, the way to do a back roll without rolling right over your neck. Each of these pieces, but it seems like, you're training for gymnastics or something until you explain to somebody that the hip escape is the move where somebody gets you in side control. This is how you're going to make the space. The break fall is when somebody takes you down. This is how you're going to roll so that you don't take the impact. The forward shoulder roll is when you're being swept over top of somebody and they have sleeve control. You need to learn this to be able to duck through. The back shoulder roll is when you're being stacked by somebody. If we're doing hip exchanges, this is what you're practicing passing. If you're doing windshield wipers, this is what you're doing to get control of knee on belly. If you're doing bear crawls, you're practicing playing open guard against the floor because you're coordinating your hands and feet back and forth. So you have to first tell people these are the moves that are just going to be your warm-up. These are how to do these moves properly. And then this is how these moves are going to apply to real life jiu-jitsu. Because if you just tell somebody crawl across the mat, they're not getting anything out of it. They don't understand it. It's tiring. But if you tell them this is how you're going to do it to coordinate your hands and feet, and this is exactly the motion you're going to use when you're playing open guard or you're playing knee shield with somebody, then all of a sudden it's worthwhile doing.
When you were talking with the white belts or, just talk with white belts in general, did any of them have like any kind of misconceptions coming into jiu-jitsu that, they expressed to you or that they might have thought was way off from what it really was?
Oh, a couple of them brought up that the first class article, and they said, "Oh, I saw you posted that on Instagram. Like, I read it. I wish I had known that before the first time that I came here." And just like we spent 5 minutes now talking about shoes, that's a recurring theme with just about everybody, where almost every first day person doesn't know what the shoe issue is, doesn't know when you come on and off of the mat. Because that's, something that is a cultural norm in jiu-jitsu, but there's no way to learn a cultural norm unless somebody else socializes you into it. There's no magic force field around the mat, but we treat it like there is one because of the norms of jiu-jitsu. So that was a first one. And then I also wrote an article right after that about etiquette and how to not be that guy in the gym, and things about the hygiene that if you've been, working outside all day and you stink, yeah, you're going into a class where you're going to get super sweaty, but take a shower first so that you're going into this at, back down to a 0 on the stink level. And maybe you're only going to get back up to, a 5 or 6 during this. If you come in at a 6, you're going to be a 10 by the end of warm up. And then somebody's going to have to, do technique with you for 20 minutes. And it's going to be miserable. So the hygiene piece, I think, was something that people didn't understand because you're not used to being this close to people. Not being spazzy, not doing the things that's going to put somebody at a high risk of injury if you're huge and you're just jumping around out of control. Somebody who's brand new to this doesn't understand what any of that means or what they're doing, or that people might not want to roll with them because they're a 250-pound guy who's just doing belly flops onto you the whole time.
Yeah, that's, I think me coming in, I was, super like strong, like coming off like all this weightlifting. So I'm thinking I got to be the strongest dude in here. And, not, I wasn't in any position to get any kind of submissions on anyone, but just under that idea was like, so imagine if I did happen to get a hold of a Kimura, and I don't know, like, oh, don't crank this, I'd like to think that most folks would know, maybe don't, but who, I don't know. I've rode with, white belts who've been there, I feel like, for long enough that, that's something they should know, but maybe that's something that's never been explained either. It was like, part of that etiquette, like, you get a submission, you don't need to like crank, a Kimura or arm bar, like really pull down on it. But, just these types of introduction things, I think, are so important because it'll prolong your desire to train and your teammates. Everybody wins, when everybody knows what to expect coming in the door in some capacity.
Yeah. And then some of those kind of hygiene things blend with etiquette too, and just can save somebody some time when they get in there too. People show up on the first day and they're wearing a watch, they're wearing a bracelet, they've got a nose ring and multiple earrings and a necklace and all this other stuff. And, that's fine to wear, 24-hour fitness. It's fine to wear playing basketball, but you're not, when you're grinding on people, when you're having arms pushed across, that bracelet, even if it's, a cloth bracelet that just has a little metal fitting, you can, cut somebody's face with that. You can cut somebody's eye with that. Those are just these little things. Wearing shorts that have a zipper in them, that zipper is gonna cut somebody if they move across it the wrong way. If you've got tie-up drawstring pants instead of, all the jiu-jitsu brands are that double Velcro closure. If you've got a tie-up drawstring and somebody's, transitioning or playing guard or whatever, it's easy to get your toe or your foot or something caught in a drawstring, caught in a pocket. Either it's going to tear your pants or it might, bend somebody's foot or finger the wrong way. So it's just these little things, having the right gear, not having dirty gear, having things that fit correctly, and not having metal rivets or zippers or piercings or jewelry that can cut your partner. All really basic to us. A first day person doesn't know that. But if they know that before they get there, they don't get in a situation of somebody having to tell them, oh, you're not dressed right, or, oh, you need to go to the bathroom and take your piercings out. They can do that all at home before they get there in the first place.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me of a friend who, she explained her first time on the mats, she had on makeup, and this went on for a while with her, where she came in, from, work, whatever, she's dolled up and she's running gis with makeup, all over their white gis. I was like, ugh. So
yeah, skip the black mascara.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. And it's funny now because having trained, for so long, and I think about this, like everything that you mentioned, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it does seem like common sense, but I guess first day in, especially, well, because like when I was reading an article, when you mentioned the zippers, on, like some sweatpants has zipper pockets, or the strings, things like that, anything that can like scratch you. And I think for a while I was wearing basketball shorts. I think my first week I had to come in, I'm in like long basketball shorts, and again, not thinking about the bagginess and catching someone's foot or getting ripped. So yeah, I think again, all of this is super important, because you got to learn. And we shouldn't have to learn through experience, the bad experience, especially because, like you said, somebody coming in from work and they've worked a long day, outside, they've been sweating. Now you come in and it's about to be a rough time for whoever pairs up with them. My wife gives me not a hard time, but she always like, I on a weekend, especially, like I'll shower before I go into class. I'll shower when I come home. And, if I have to go back to something else, I'll take another shower. It's like, like, why are you taking so many showers? Or like if I shower in the morning on a Friday, come home from work, take a shower, go to class, and then shower again. She's like, dude, like the water bill, like, what are you doing? It's like, first off, I don't want to, bring home any kind of yuckiness, like staph or whatever. Not that we have the issue, but if you got sweat and junk sitting on your skin, stuff forms. You're a petri dish.
Well, that's at the end of the first day article is telling somebody what to do when they leave, because you also, if you've never wrestled or you've never been in this environment, you don't realize, like, you want to shower as fast as possible after you get off the mat, because it's the environment. As you said, it can be the cleanest place in the world, but if you sit around with a dirty gi, like, their fungus is going to grow, bacteria is going to grow, viruses are going to spread. So taking a towel, having soap, having a bag, having a change of clothes, imagine you go to your first class, you were wearing your work clothes, you have your cotton undershirt under the gi, you're wearing your work socks because you don't have any of the flip-flops or anything. Then you go to leave, you got this soaking wet gi that you just got, or a loaner gi. You don't have any extra clothes. Now you're getting into your car, you're sitting on your car seat, with all the funk on you. You might not realize, like, you got to wash your gear the second you get home. I shower twice, and sometimes I get in the pool too. Like, I'm paranoid about it, but you got to know that on the first day. So if somebody's class starts out bad because they didn't have the right gear, and then their class ends bad because they didn't have the stuff they needed to take a shower, they didn't have a change of clothes, they stunk their car up, now they're really not going to come back. And I was surprised that there's not more content out there like this, or that every gym doesn't have some kind of tutorial like this on their website. Because if you think about, like, gym fees are, $150, $200 a month, both places. If you can get that person who comes through the door to stay for a year, that's $2,000 in the owner's pocket. And I have no financial, relationship with any of this. So it doesn't matter to me. I like to have more training partners. That's my incentive for this. But if you're a gym owner, if you could just do something to bump your retention from 1% to 10%, that's a lot of money. It's $20,000 a year in extra revenue. And $20,000 a year in extra revenue can be another person that's sponsored for competition. It can be upgrading, some of the broke down stuff at the gym. It can be all kinds of things that you can do with that money. The people are there. We just need to do a better job of conversion and retaining.
Yeah. Does your gym where you're at now, do they have showers at the facility?
Yeah, that is a 100% requirement for me at a BJJ gym. And I understand, some people in really small communities, you might only have one option. But if you're in a big city and there are a lot of options, I will only train somewhere that has a gym. Because as soon as I leave the mat, it has a shower. As soon as I leave the mat, I'm immediately showering, going home, throwing my stuff in the wash, jumping in the pool, and probably showering again right after that. Like, you got to stay clean in this sport.
Yeah. Our I believe 2 out of our 3 gyms has showers. I know the main one has a really, really nice shower setup. I haven't been to our Owens Mills location, but I believe they have a shower, and our Severna Park one does not. That's where I train at. So like when I get off the mats, I'm like, all right, change clothes. One of the guys, I have wipes in my bag. Like I'll see him after class wiping his feet down and wiping his hands and arms down. I'm like, yeah, I need to remember that. I usually just change clothes, hop in the car, and go home. I was like, all right, it's been real, but I'm stinky right now and I got to get out of it. So
yeah, and if you don't have any options, if there's no shower, there's not a pond next door to the facility or whatever, making sure that you have a towel to throw down on your car seats, have some hand sanitizer, have a washcloth that you can get wet and at least wash your face off, things like that. That can make a big difference.
Yeah, especially the washcloth one, especially because if you don't have a shower, you have a bathroom with a sink. You at least go in and wipe yourself down a little bit. I remember when I bought the wipes, my wife was asking me, she's like, why are you buying wipes? It's like, I have them in my gym bag. She's like, oh, okay, I get you now. So yeah, and then like I said, the one teammate, he we'll be sitting down afterward, and he's wiping his feet down. I'm like, good call. Like I have my wipes here. I'm just changing my clothes and I'm getting the hell out of here. Like just getting home. So I think I'm like 10 minutes from the gym. So it's like as fast as I can, let me get home. But again, if you don't have those options to get home quickly, like you said, even if there's a pond next to the gym, go in the bathroom, wipe yourself down. Tend to have paper towels too, something.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really important too for people that are looking at different training schedules. I mean, we're both nighttime guys, so it doesn't matter because, the day's done and you're going home. But, my gym now has 2 really popular, a morning class that's from 6:30 to 8. So people are leaving that to go straight to work. So if you're going to, do that, then it's essential to find a gym that has a shower so that you can get cleaned up and then head out to the office. And then Orlando BJJ also has a noontime class. And so that's if you've got a break from work, you can be in there. People that are, on the road for work, whatever else, shoot in there, have a quick class at noon, shower up, get back to work. So I think that can be the option to really integrate into, your schedule, because I think that's the other big barrier with BJJ is it's a big time commitment. And if you're going to get better and you're going to be committed, you need to train 2 or 3 times a week. And if you've got, a family and career and whatever else, it can be really hard to fit it in. So when you're looking at a gym, making sure that it's not about just making it to that first class, those first 2 classes, it's looking at the schedule and saying, is there a class that's going to fit into the rest of my life 2 or 3 times every week on this? And if you look at it and that's not the case, I think that's another reason that people don't keep coming back, because they didn't understand the time commitment when you start getting into it.
Yeah, that's huge as well. I didn't really learn that until later on, or at least I didn't acknowledge it, because back then my commute to the gym was a little further away, but I just never thought about it because I was an evening guy. I just go straight over to the gym from work and, go ahead and hop out there on the mats. But once I moved closer to the gym, it kind of clicked in my head. It was like how much time was saved, just the commute home and all these things. I guess, again, that's something that kind of goes into the whole ideal of what you should know going into it is, how much time is this going to take in terms of your commute? And then, just in general, if you want to get better over time, how much class time are you spending, and then off the mats too, looking at videos, it takes up a lot. And if you're prepared for that, if you're ready for that, because sometimes people come in and then they're not prepared for that as well. And that drives some folks away also. just as you're going to the one class or the two classes and you don't feel like you're getting better. It's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and leave, but it's a commitment.
Yeah. And that's, what the third article that I put out, which is about why you suck at rolling and why that's the point. Because I think you see the people that do make it to the second or third or fourth class, some of them get it immediately, but some of them just get so frustrated because they're like, how am I getting swept over and over? How am I not able to pass your guard? How come I can't get a submission? It's like, well, you're on your third class, and I've been doing this a couple times a week for like 16 years. If you're like submitting me and passing my guard and sweeping me, what's the point of any of this? Like, you're supposed to suck at the start. It's going to take you probably a couple months, maybe a year before you're consistently beating the other white belts. It's going to take you a year or 2 years before you're at the level where you're matched up with the blue belts and you can take care of every other white belt. So I think people come into this and they think like, oh, I've been at 3 classes. I learned, a Kimura or a sweep during the technique. How come I can't do this? How come I'm not submitting people? And it's like, well, buddy, you're not supposed to be submitting people. I think that one of the types of students I've seen that has a lot of problems with that are police officers. Like, almost every gym either lets police officers train for free or train for a really steep discount. And those guys will come in for a first class. You're talking to them before. They're usually pretty friendly, and they're talking about, the everything they did in the police academy or their combatives or this or that. But it's usually pretty easy to take care of them. And then they never come back because they expected that everything they learned in the police academy means that they're going to be able to beat every person, in this jiu-jitsu gym. But when everybody from the newer white belts, through the upper belts absolutely handle them, it's a very few that are like, oh, wow, I better learn about this and master them. Most of them are like, well, I'm never going back there. And that's just, people don't have a real expectation of how hard this is.
Yeah, I guess that kind of takes me to the belt system, and I'm just thinking about that because I know that's been a conversation around our area with me and a few teammates recently. As January, typically is like December, January is around when most academies will do their belt promotions. We've had quite a few folks get promoted, and then recently we just actually had some promotions after Worlds. So, looking at that, when it comes to, I guess with white belts specifically, and they're stepping on the mat. We kind of know with white belts, you're here, you're learning. The expectation isn't that you're going to be good. I mean, the expectation isn't that you're going to be able to probably sweep anybody or get a submission or anything, like, within the first month. But when we do have the white belts who have these higher expectations, who are beating themselves up, how is that typically handled, or how should that be typically handled, without making them feel too shitty about themselves.
Yeah, I think that what I wrote about white belts is you need to frame it as the only expectation of you as a white belt is that you keep coming back, you have a positive attitude, and you try to survive a little bit longer. Your very first day, almost everybody in the gym should be able to sweep and submit you in under 10 seconds. If you're really athletic, if you had a wrestling background, some other things, maybe it's going to take somebody 30 seconds to get you. But, in that first month, kind of the expectation, keep coming, have a good attitude, try to survive, try to turn that 10 seconds into 20 seconds, try to turn that 20 seconds into 30 seconds. I was talking with a guy during some drills we were doing the other day, where he was getting frustrated because he was trying to, we were doing like a top bottom out type of thing from open guard. And so the guy on top's trying to pass, the guy on the bottom is trying to sweep. And, this guy just kept getting past because he was trying to set up sweeps, but he just didn't really understand it. And I said, right now, don't even think about the sweep. Just try to think about defending the pass for as long as you can. And instead of, if you make it 30 seconds, then you've won this round mentally. And I think that that's what the only expectation of a white belt is, that you keep making it harder for somebody to take advantage of you. But there's no expectation that you're going to be dominating anybody else.
Yeah. I'd like that. It's just be unkillable. Like each day try to get better at just, defending it. I think I got stuck in that for a while, though. I think I'm still kind of stuck in that, where I'm so comfortable defending. I put myself in bad spots just so I could defend. And like, I feel like I'm doing something, but
there are asterisks on this too, because Dante, I'll put this out there. There is a new white belt. He's been coming for maybe 6 weeks, 2 months. This guy mops the floor with me every single time. Why is that happening? 6'5", 295 pounds, started center on a D1 football team all 4 years, wrestled in high school. And we were talking about techniques and things. Nicest guy you can imagine. Twinkle toes, like moves so fast at 295. But we were talking after the first or second class and some techniques, but he had just crushed me. I mean, like passes so hard, so fast, will throw you down so fast if you're standing up. He said, yeah, I'm a white belt in jiu-jitsu. He said, I'm a black belt in moving people and pushing heavy shit. I was like,
true.
Well, okay, that's fair enough. So the asterisk in this is that there are people who are gifted at every size and ability, and there is going to be that occasional phenom where none of these rules apply, because they are going to be able to do a lot of things to beat people at every belt.
Yeah, like that's a good point. Think about, again, it's, wrestlers coming in, you had a offensive lineman, D1 at that, 4-year starter. I also feel, though, with those athletes, though, they come in, they have a head start, but then the question is, along the line, technique, are they taking the time to absorb it? Because they've already kind of got the brute part of it, the bigger physical aspect of it, now the fine motor, if you will, how much time are they putting into that? Because it's like, if you say, hey, I know I can take this person down every single time. Once we get to the ground, though, I can hold them too. But now, are you focusing on, transitioning, to a better position, transitioning to a submission, stuff like that? So, even though they have that head start, they have the advantage. It's like, I guess the next step is, are you taking advantage of all of your opportunities now from this point?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is based on, in these sports, you develop an attention to detail and an ability to learn kind of physical information in ways that regular people don't, if you're a really high level athlete. So I'm thinking of another guy who played D1 soccer all 4 years, and he's young. He just joined, and it was last week we were working a De La Hiva setup into X guard and then a sweep from X guard. And this guy, I was working with him, and it took, like one explanation of, how you're going to break somebody's balance in De La Hiva by kicking their leg out. And then you want to get on your hip to bring their foot up. And that's going to give you some space to, loop your leg around to be able to use that as your entry into X guard. And then once we're in X guard, you're locking this leg out. So you're going to move somebody the other way. So then they're going to fall. Within like 2 tries, this guy was getting it perfectly. And I said, oh yeah, man, do you normally come to morning class? He was like, no, this is my third class. And it was because I was watching him as they were doing the technique lessons. He was just dialed in, and you could tell that he was one of those athletes that is just thinking visually about every detail and instantly able to absorb every detail. So I think that's something that can be really important for everybody to try to adopt that mindset. Because if people are capable of picking up this information so quickly, but you have to know how to pay attention to it and know how to kind of absorb those lessons.
I think also being coachable. It sounds like, being a D1 athlete, again, it's not just reserved to D1 athletes, a good athlete that's, coachable, that knows to pay attention to those details, but also can take instruction well, because, there's so many of us that have, crossed through these doors where, you see somebody and you're trying to explain to them, put your hand here, and then, put your foot there. And, for whatever reason, either they're just choosing, like, well, no, I do it better this way, or they just can't follow the instruction. But, being able to pick up on that goes a long way as well.
And being able to dial in, like you'll see during the technique lesson, some people are looking at what's going on in the MMA cage. Some people are looking at their fingernails, doing whatever, spaced out. Other people are dialed in. And you'll see some people actually, as the technique's being shown, they're kind of moving their body through it, trying to internalize those lessons. Like, oh, the right hand's going here. And they're kind of, doing that in the air with their own hands as they're going. I think that can be a really useful way to make sure that you're taking that time, because you only have 20 minutes during a class to learn and rep something. That was, one of the other articles I put out in this kind of first burst was the importance of drilling, the importance of paying attention to the drilling. You've got this really short lesson where this is probably going to be, if it's a weird variation of some move, this is the only time in your entire jiu-jitsu life you're going to be taught this. This is the only time you're going to have 20 minutes to practice it. You don't want to waste a second of that. And if you're looking at your fingernails or talking to somebody or talking about the TV show last night, or you go to, get some water or whatever, you're robbing yourself and you're robbing your partner of this really important time that you need to, like, it's crazy when you think about it. You have 20 minutes to try to memorize something for the rest of your life.
Well, I think that, happens to a lot of us out there for whatever reason, whether it be, I feel like those midday classes, a lot of us are a lot more focused, whether it be we're on lunch break and we know, like, I get to get away from, that for a minute, or, if you happen to be off, I used to be off on Wednesdays and I go midday. So it was the start of my day for me to go out there, and I was a little bit more dialed in versus at night. Whenever I go to a night class, it's like I'm looking like the lights are on, but nobody's home type thing. But yeah, and
that comes down to the person very much. But if you're having a day where you're off, or you're not focused, you still have a partner to work with. And even if you're not getting it, half of the time is your partner getting their opportunity to get it. And I think a lot of people cheat their partner out of reps, because just because you're not feeling something, or you're not feeling a move, or it's not working for your body type, you still need to be the person that's going to let your partner practice that. And if you start slowing it down, if you decided you had enough of doing the reps, your partner's losing that opportunity too. Which it kind of blows my mind. Like, I don't know what's going on with this, but this whole idea of like jiu-jitsu without drills or lessons, where people are just going to come in and like do whatever, that's a really weird concept for me.
Yeah, I remember stumbling into that conversation or into like in one of the chats, in one of our groups or whatever. I saw people like going back and forth about it. It was getting heated, and I was like, I'm not even understanding what's going on. And, you know, I guess the eco training or just like ecological training, like just go in and, you know, do the things. I was like, well, I still want to know how to do the things though. I can't, you can't expect me to go in there and do a knee cut.
Well, right.
Without knowing like the steps.
Well, we do so many. Jiu-Jitsu is about doing counterintuitive things. The best people, one of the guys I get stuck rolling with all the time, and I was getting really frustrated about it until I finally figured out his Instagram, and I realized that he's won gold at like every major tournament in the world at every belt level. So I'm not feeling bad anymore. But he's so good at moving out and moving angles, and what's not natural at all is to disengage, change directions, take pressure the other direction, come under the opposite way that you think somebody's going, that you've got grips on the right side, and all of a sudden you're ducking through, changing an angle and coming around to the left. How do you learn? The natural thing for people to do is what happens in every kids class. You know, you bounce on top of each other, you roll off of each other. Nobody has any balance. Nobody has any coordination, but eventually one of the kids ends up on top of the other kid. And then, you know, maybe they get like their arm bar out of it. That's all you can learn from not having any instruction. Doing every one of these other things of knowing I've got to pin this, I've got to raise this, I've got to make their foot go backwards so that the front foot gets light. I need to pull down on this shoulder so their bodies turn so that their hips are off balance. How do you learn any of that if you're not drilling?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I like the, you know, I guess I should maybe try to find one of those cats out of the group and like, yo, let's talk. Like, to like walk me through your process, because yeah, I don't get it. You know, it's like, you know, when we've been working on a knee cut lately again, so that is fresh in my mind. But it's like, you know, different ways to enter into the knee cut. You know, you got to drill that. You know, you go over it slowly. You know, you do your situational drills with it. You know, but that's how you learn. So then when you're in real time doing it, now you have, you know, where your balance should be one way or the other. It is kind of baffling. I actually get comments sometimes on posts that I put up where, you know, it's usually like if somebody's showing a technique, they're showing it in like an instructional, they're explaining it. And then I'll get folks that'll comment, well, yeah, of course it's going to work if they're going that slow. And I don't engage in comments anymore just because it's like, this is the internet. You're right. You're always right. That's always the answer on the internet. Everyone's always right. No one's ever wrong. So, but you know, I think about it, it's like, well, you have to learn to move, dummy.
Well, that's
like,
every part of jiu-jitsu too. Is
yeah,
you're going to do this if this is presented to you. Well, what if they stand up? You're going to do something else. What if they post? You're going to do something else. What if they tuck their elbows? You're going to do something else. Like, jiu-jitsu is an infinite game of what ifs. Techniques are giving you a setup for a likely circumstance that you're going to get into. And if you go to classes 3 times a week for the next 10 years, you're going to know 1,000 different circumstances where you're going to have something to do out of it. And, you know, if you have a good instructor, pretty much every technique should be 2 or 3 variants of the same type of thing. This is going to be this, you know, De La Riva sweep. But if their weight is forward, you're going to change it and do this. If their weight goes backwards, you're going to change it and do this. And if they, you know, try to block your foot, you're going to change it and do this. That's a great lesson. That's how I like to see a class structured. Of we're going to do the basic of something, and we're going to do a couple different variants off of it. And then that whole week or that month is going to be more variants that are building on the same thing. And by the end of that month, now you have 20 or 30 ways to attack all of the most common variants, you know, of a position.
Yeah, the move that you see, whether it be on social media or in the gym, and it's just being shown one way in the moment. That's not the end all be all. It always kind of gets me when people, like you'll get the, well, what if they do this? Like you said, there's a sequence we're going through here. We're going to go to that next, and then because ultimately, if it just works off that one try, chances are you're probably rolling with a white belt who doesn't know a counter or know what to do next, whatever it may be. And that's fine. They got to learn too, but just drilling and knowing the things and like you said, like drilling with intent.
So Dante, here's an etiquette question for you.
Yes.
Do you think it's okay for people to ask questions during the technique?
Do I think it's okay? Like if I'm instructing personally, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But if I'm in the class listening, I personally don't like it because I know they're working towards something and they're going, it's like, we're going to get the answer. Just let it play out. So as a student, I prefer questions, and our instructors always ask at the end, any questions? So it's like, you're going to get to ask your question. Just be patient. So as a student, no. As someone that might be explaining it, is like, okay, like because I might not be explaining it clearly to them. So
yeah, I agree with you on that. The one caveat being sometimes, like, say it's like a deep half guard position and you can't see where the instructor's hand is. If they're saying, grab the cuff in this way, you can ask a detail about something that wasn't clear or ask them to show it again. But yeah, that's something I wrote in the etiquette or one of the articles, is save your what if questions, because jiu-jitsu is just a series of what ifs. The entire thing is a what if, and you're just learning one specific situation.
Yeah, what ifs tend to come from like brand new white belts, mostly, not even like white belts that have been there for a minute, but like maybe a month, 2 months in, something like that. And even with, like, as you're explaining there with the deep half and you can't see the the hand positioning or something, that still gets asked at the end of that portion of the instructional. I record the instructionals for my own, like, so I can go back and review it later. So I usually keep the camera rolling even when the questions come in, just in case, because there are a lot of good questions that pop up after he gets done explaining it the first time. But again, it's patience. Like, we're getting to it, and if he doesn't get to it at the end, he'll always say, anybody have any questions? And that's, and a lot of times I know we have some white belts that are afraid to ask questions or to ask to see it again, because that's when that comes up. Does anybody need to see it again? And they're white. I'll raise my hand because I'm pretty sure you were looking puzzled. And also, realistically, for myself, even though I'm recording, I still want to see it one more time, just in real time. But it's all about just we're going to get to it. Just be patient, and if you're scared to ask, especially when the floor is open now for questions, that's what gets me, is because you'll have guys asking questions when the floor isn't open, but when the floor is open, now it's like quiet. It's like, come on, dude, where's your questions now?
It is funny. This just happened in this last week. So the guy who's an absolute phenom, who's won medals at every belt, he was showing the technique one of the nights this week, and it was a De La Riva setup on the right leg, and then you use that to transition into an X guard, but then off of the X guard, he switched the balance and it flipped around to like an X guard control now on the left leg. But when the guy stepped back, he did a dip around and pulled it into a triangle, and it was like the most complicated. He did it smooth. It was the most complicated sequence I've ever seen. And I asked him, I think he showed it 3 times. And I was like, yeah, can you show it again? One more time. And then we broke off and started working on it. Dude, not a single person could get it all. And he's like, wait a second, let's bring it back. We're just gonna do a sweep instead. So I think there can be a time too where as an instructor, it makes sense in your head and you think it's only a little step from the foundational technique that you started. But man, this was a slick move. I wish I could do it, but it was like a 15-part transition to go from, regular De La Hiva to a triangle. And so he was just like, okay, we're going to abandon this. Everybody come back in. We're just going to do a sweep instead. So I think in those situations, it's probably okay to be like, hey, professor, let's knock this down a notch.
Yeah. We've had that, a couple of times too, where as we all break to go actually drill the technique, and coach is walking around and, okay, I got to correct this. Okay, I got to help correct. It's like, all right, everybody come back. Everybody come back. Like, let's break this down, or let's transition to something else. I mean, sometimes that's, jiu-jitsu though. There's a lot of moving parts. So a lot of times we're going to, typically get it, but sometimes there might be something that an instructor to them is like, this is pretty easy. And the rest of us was like, maybe for you, but I might need a little bit more time on that one. Just not today.
But yeah, I've got a 3-step brain.
Yeah. Like for me, 3 is it depends on the day of the week. Like, I mean, if you get me on a Saturday morning, get me 3, 4. You catch me on a Friday after work, which is usually our wrestling class, and it's pretty, pretty basic. So like 2-step movements, and it's like, all right, cool, let's go to the next thing. Which what I like about our wrestling classes is a lot of repetition, same stuff we do every week. Just repeat, and then you add a little bit more to it, and it makes such a big difference. But those Saturday classes, that's where those extra steps come in. Where it's like, because Saturday is gi, it's just like, okay, there's a lot of moving parts, but that's a 90-minute class, so we got a little bit more time to work.
Yeah, and I think that can be really frustrating for new students, or really any students at all, is some of these more complex guards, whether it's De La Hiva or X guard. We were working worm guard last month, some different spider guard variants. Any of those, they have so many different pieces in them that if you leave one of them out, it's not going to work at all. Like, you've got to have limb control, balance control, posture control, and do something to change the person's weight. And if you just have one thing that you're doing wrong, then it's not going to work at all. And you're just going to get passed and crushed in like a really, really awkward way, because you're trying to, fold your leg inside or whatever else. And so I think that can be really frustrating for people. Is there's stuff that's high percentage and low percentage. And like, the way that the percentages get higher is either simplicity. So basically anybody can kind of figure out the steps to it, or mastery of you've worked so much through a complicated position that all of those steps automatically. And if you're stuck somewhere in the middle, you're just going to be frustrated. You're going to be like, why is it I'm trying this technique from the class and I just keep getting smashed and passed by everybody? And it's like, because this is a little bit out of your level and you're missing this one piece. You weren't controlling my sleeve. And since you weren't controlling my sleeve, I can just stand up, grab your leg, pull it across, and pass you. But dude, that's back to the time and reps and the amount of time you spend drilling. You're never going to get that feedback, and you're never going to know the right way, and you're never going to build the muscle memory of it unless you're doing the drills over and over and over. At least that's how it is for me.
Yeah, for me, it is the reps, but I think when I first did knee cut, I worked on it a lot, so much to the point where you would think I would have a good knee cut. And I don't know why. And then even when I did privates with my coach, working on a knee cut, it didn't click, but I'm getting the reps. And then I can't remember the moment that it did click, but it just all came together. It was just like, and then, but off of that, everything else fell into place too. It's like, you turn that peg the right way and now it falls into the slot, and then everything kind of went, the knee cut, side control transition, popping up and getting the Kimura, and it all just fell together for me. Whereas before it was like, I can't get this knee cut. And I don't know why, because I worked on it so much. I've done all the reps, but for whatever reason, mentally, I don't know why. I think my body was doing the autopilot stuff, but then I wasn't thinking about why I'm doing the stuff at times. It's like, I go into the knee cut, but then my hand position is wrong. I'm not blocking the knee shield. It's like, oh shit, okay. But once I figured, once I, like it all clicked, it was like, okay, everything fell into place, muscle memory, everything, and it was gold. And now I feel like, you know what? I'll use my basic bitch knee cut too, and still not work. Every so often, I get a higher belt, and they're like, we've been drilling this too. And I think that's something I feel like gets kind of lost in drilling and working on the move in the gym. Is frustration comes when you're like, oh man, I can't get this off. We're all learning it together. So as we're learning it, we know what to look out for. So it's going to be a while.
Well, everybody's going to learn it differently too. And I think that can be something that one-on-one working with newer students, you can help connect it to something that they know about. So like the knee cut, I was working on that with a guy a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about it. And I was like, well, did you ever play baseball? Did you ever, do a slide tackle in soccer? And he's like, oh yeah. So, well, once you shoot your knee through, drop your hip and drive that leg forward, just like you're doing a slide into the base. And like, once he tried it 2 or 3 times, instantly he had it down. The soccer dude, I was sparring with him the other day, and he was just playing like straight into the open guard. And I told him, I'm like, if you're playing soccer and you're trying to, juke somebody, are you going to run straight through them, or are you going to try to work an angle around them? And he was like, well, I'm going to work an angle. So why aren't you doing that right now? And then he started, moving side to side, and all of a sudden he was quick and agile and had good balance. And then he was getting into great positions to pass. So I think a lot of it is connecting with other people. The big football dude, I hate giving him pointers because he just messes me up even worse. But it was the same way. We were doing some takedown stuff, and he was kind of reaching. And I'm like, dude, if you're blocking somebody, your hands are inside the shoulder pads. Like, why don't you just have your hands on my lapel and just turn my body? And he did that. He like lifted my feet off the ground. But it was just taking something that, he'd known since probably first grade playing Pop Warner. But he was looking at a gi and not realizing that grabbing the gi was the same as grabbing the inside of the shoulder pads.
Yeah, that's I never even thought about that connection. I feel like I should have, like all these years, just thinking about like connect, especially the football one, because coming off of football and grabbing the inside, I just would automatically think like, well, I'm just going for underhook. Like that wasn't even a natural thing for me, but it was just like, okay, here we are.
Well, that's why this no drill thing makes no sense. Like so much of this stuff isn't intuitive. Like you have instructors who've worked this stuff for years. You have people that charge hundreds of dollars for seminars to teach 2 moves. Like that's what jiu-jitsu has been forever, because you can't figure this stuff out. I mean, you can figure some of it out on your own, but to like get to the mastery level of it, you've got to really spend a lot of time like learning and working and refining technique.
Yeah. Like, well, and even like you said, like you can figure some of it out. It's like, yeah, it's like, but like you said, not to a mastery level, not even like really to a blue belt level. A lot of it. I had a friend who used to come through. We'd open up the gym on a Sunday morning, and he said he would like do MMA and like kind of grapple with his cousins in the backyard and stuff. And he and I got to kind of drill and it's like, all right, let's see what things you do know and what you do have. And it's if he's going against his his cousins, it's probably pretty good. It's like you're going against somebody who, knows the defenses to these and just body movement and body placement. Is like, I mean, for the one thing, at least you have a decent head start, but you're not getting upper hand on anybody on the mats. So yeah, you do need to have, instructions. You do have to, go through the steps of drilling things. You do have to, be in a situational drill type scenario as well, because to say, okay, well, we're going to work, rear naked chokes, and we're just going to do it, stationary. We're just going to sit here. Well, no, you're going to we got to work, get into the back, because you don't just automatically end up on the back. How do you get there? How do you transition to the back? How do you, what if you lose the back? What do you do? How do you get it back? If you can't do that, can you go to a bow and arrow if you're in the gi? There are things that you need those drills for. You can't just say, go out there and do it, because it doesn't make any sense. At least for me, I can't just go out there and do it.
Now, there is a lot of value in the sparring time when instead of just open sparring, you do situational sparring, where it's going to be, start in side control and it ends when either you pass or they escape. And I like that, because that way both partners are only thinking about kind of the limitations of that situation, that specific position, and, drilling that out of any position in jiu-jitsu. I think that can be an awesome way to reinforce and keep working, because if you end up, on bottom side control with 10 different people that day doing 20 reps, every one of those, you're tinkering a little bit with your hip escape or your position or the way you're working the knee back in or the way that you're ducking through to come to turtle and wrestle up. Like, that's really helpful, because you're stacking your learning on one specific topic across, all of your reps in that session. So I think that has a lot of value. Drilling on its own has a lot of value. Open sparring has a lot of value when you have things to put together. I don't know if it really matters that much for somebody in their first, couple weeks or a couple months, but you can't just do one of them. You have to do all of these. And then on top of that, like, the warm up is so important, because the warm up's giving you the conditioning. It's getting your body ready for the class that day. It's getting you, warm enough for whatever the technique or the sparring or the exercises are going to be. And it's teaching you to make every one of those moves automatic. Hipscape, automatic. Anytime I'm falling forward, I'm tucking my shoulder to roll through it. Anytime I'm falling backwards, I'm tucking my arms. That's all the stuff that's going to keep people from getting injured. And it's going to make people be jiu-jitsu, do jiu-jitsu movements, not just doing the random person flail.
Yeah. For someone fresh coming in, I can't imagine them just, you say, all right, well, here's the move I'm going to show you, but now we're just going to go into open sparring now. Like, good luck. It like, especially if you're brand new, like not even like brand new, but like, let's say again, like 2 months in, like that's going to be a disaster. I mean, you might be able to get away with it. Somebody who's been training, for several years and they've done this stuff before, perhaps, but I don't know. I'm just a firm believer in just drilling the techniques and making sure you get those fundamentals down, the fundamentals of the move, whether it be, again, if you got somebody's back, making sure you're keeping good pressure with your legs, keeping chest to back contact, keeping, your ear close to home, you just, like, those little things matter, because if you're not drilling those things and you just get somebody's back, you're probably just hanging out, instead of knowing, like, oh, be like a backpack. You got to drill that. That's not an automatic thing. If I said to a friend, be like a backpack, they don't know what the fuck that means. They're just like, what? Like, I don't get it. So, you got to have those reps and the positional, drilling, especially, just it's like I say, you can't just like, okay, we're going to work the back. We're going to work rear naked choke from the back. How are we getting there? What are we doing if they defend? what's your counter? Like if they block you, do you have a backup plan for that? Where do you go to from there? I think it's like jiu-jitsu, all in all, you have to have all the parts working together. You can't just take one part and say, this is jiu-jitsu. Like, I'm only going to drill and I'm never going to have, situationals, or I'm only going to spar and I'm never going to have drills. It's a family. You need to treat it as such.
All right, Dante, if you're going into a class and there's going to be a situational portion at the end of it, what is the position that you're like, oh man, I do not want to be doing this position defending for the next 10 minutes against everybody else here? And what's the one where they're like, oh yeah, bring it on, I can't wait to get into this?
I don't like being mounted. Like, I can get out of there, but I don't know. I burn a lot of energy getting out. And it's like, I know, they're like, you get your frames, slowly work your way out. But for whatever reason, I freak out. Like, I can't be here. But weirdly enough, I don't mind people being on my back. Like, and I know that's supposed to be like the worst spot, but I don't want to say safe, but I feel like there's I have spots that I'm like, okay, I know I can do this, and kind of still keep my neck protected. But being mounted, no, don't like it. And maybe it's like a claustrophobic thing for me, perhaps. I don't know. But if you got my back, maybe I'm just there for the hugs. I don't know.
You've got, a narrow neck. It's funny you said those two, because I think if I had to pick, it would be the complete opposite, where mount is fine. Like, you're pretty safe as long as somebody doesn't have the high mount, getting your elbows up, starting to isolate an arm. If you can keep somebody low in mount, then it's just a matter of time until you can work a hip back and work a knee up, or trap a foot, or trap a hand and roll them. Like, I feel like the mount is actually a pretty safe space to be on the bottom, as long as you're really careful with protecting your neck and keeping your arms exposed. Back is terrible for me. I mean, probably because I have a giraffe neck, so it's really easy for somebody to get in there. And then my C-spine is too messed up to like really tuck my chin and defend with just my chin. Like, I won't be able to turn my head for like 3 days if I do that. But it's funny also just how different the positions are for everybody, and then how they change, throughout jiu-jitsu too. Because like, I always felt kind of fine letting somebody, get close guard, because I'm going to be able to, escape that and pass and turn. Man, the dude who's won belts at every level, he loves to pull you into close guard, and there's zero chance you're ever going to escape, and you're going to get submitted or swept out of it 100% of the time. And now I'm terrified of close guard. So all this stuff just goes back and forth, so much through all your evolutions, where something that's simple becomes hard, something you liked, all of a sudden you don't. It's like, it's the journey that never gets any better. The parts of it just get worse.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like, I used to not mind mount. I don't know why. Like I said, it's probably claustrophobia to me now. I don't know why. Like, I just always feel uncomfortable there. But like, yeah, for like people being on my back, I have a short, stubby neck. So it's like, I feel, I don't want to say safe by any means. There's always a threat, but I'm like, okay, I know I have stuff to work with. I can tuck my chin, shrug my shoulders up. I feel relatively secure. But mount, and like, even as you're saying, it's like, yeah, I know there's so many like things that I can do and so little that they can do. But I think my brain just goes into this freak out. Like, I have to get out of here, almost to the point where I might turn just so they could get to my back, but I have to be like quick enough, like, to kind of roll so that like I'm not like on my stomach. It's like, like, actually that would be probably the worst. Like, because there's with my neck, no matter what, if you've got the back and I'm like on my stomach, there's nothing I can do. But any kind of like anyone on top mount, whether it be back or front, I probably want to go home at that point. I don't even want to be there. I might tap just before you start.
I did want to talk with you, Dante, because, I know you're into a lot beyond just jiu-jitsu. So I wrote the most recent article was about analytics and jiu-jitsu. And when this is some nerdy stuff, I just wanted to get your 2 cents on it, because it seems like it's gone this direction in every other sport, that it's going to end up being something that becomes more and more important, especially in competition jiu-jitsu. And I was listening to Pablo Torre has a great podcast every week, and he had Shane Battier from Duke on the podcast this past week, and they were making fun of, there was a quote from a sports journalist that basically said Shane Battier is the greatest no stats guy of all time. Like, barely any assists, barely any points, but he was consistently like a team leader and thought of as like one of the best defenders in the NBA. And he said that what he decided is he knew he didn't have the offensive skills to keep him in the NBA long term, but he knew that if he could study defense and be a master on defense, that what he didn't need to stop every shot. He just needed to make people take bad shots. And he talked about studying Allen Iverson, studying Kobe Bryant, and having success for him in a game was if he had somebody below their points average, if he had somebody taking mid-range shots the whole time instead of where they wanted to be. And I was thinking about that in terms of jiu-jitsu, that there are a lot of decisions that you make rolling that can either put you into a really high risk position or a really high safety position. And if this kind of sports analytics mindset of the way that you play, the positions you play, the positions you stay in, the transitions that you completely deny, if this is going to all turn into a numbers game.
Yeah, I think about that with jiu-jitsu, for myself at least. Like when I go in on a Saturday, I know there's one specific purple belt that I know I'm not gonna outpace him. I don't have the firepower to get to this position versus that. But my idea is like, if I could stop him from doing one thing, like he loves this one, one takedown. I could stop that takedown. I feel like I got some success there. How we get to the ground doesn't matter. I just can't let us get to the ground the way that he wants to get us to the ground with that one thing. Even if he just sits the guard or pulls guard, that's fine. I'll take it. Then, the next step is like, once we're in his guard, I know he has two things he likes to do from there. Got to take those away. Try to force him into it. Think about Shane Battier in that regards. Like he's not gonna outpoint Kobe. He's not gonna outpoint AI. He's not gonna match up with those guys. But if he can at least nullify them a little bit, try to throw them off their game a little bit, that's very valid, because everybody's different. And if you're trying to like match up, like if you and I roll, I'm going to have to approach you a lot differently than I would have to approach, one of my regular training partners who we kind of have this like Clash of the Titans headbutting type style. It's like, okay, I have to kind of, look in. It's like, okay, he's got longer limbs. All right. I can't just run into this guy like that. This dude's going to easily wrap me up in something or sweep me. There's always this, thought process to it, where folks who are in the game, we know there's a lot of analytics to it. There's a lot of thoughts, versus people who look at it from the outside. They just see a bunch of rolling around and a bunch of headbutting. I don't know. I like the control of it all, though. Just knowing okay, well, if you've got this, I've got to, kind of prevent it. even if I might give up something else, I don't want you to, have this, because if you get the thing you want, you're just going to continue to build off of that and just have the full advantage. Whereas if I send you to plan B or C, at least now I make you kind of have to work a little bit harder, make you think a little bit more. And who knows, that might be my plan A though. Send you to your plan B. So,
I was thinking about it by, now that the NBA season's wrapping up, just how profoundly it's changed the game and the way that it's changed 3-point shooting and roster construction and everything. And, people might think like, oh, this is just nerd stuff. Like, what's analytics? But just the really quick explanation of it is, so if the first team, if you say we're going to take 63 pointers and we're shooting at 35%, so that's about average on three, you're shooting like 35%, and we're going to take 63s in this game. If the other team, if they make 60% of their shots from two, but they only attempt 50 of them, the team that shoots the threes wins. They have more scores because you're getting an extra point out of every one of those attempts. And if you're able to turn up your number of attempts, then you all of a sudden stack the odds in your favor. So traditionally, basketball had always been like, let's work the ball inside. We're only going to take a three if it's open. And the goal is going to be, ball in the paint, try to get it to the basket. And you've got a high percentage chance. You got, higher than 60% once you're in there. But looking at analytics, it's actually, let's just throw up as many threes as we can, because as long as you're making threes at 35%, whether they're half court, logo, contested, whatever else, we just need to take more shots than them. And we just need to hit that percentage, and you're going to win games. And that's playing out in the Stanley Cup too, with Edmonton and Florida the other night. Like, I was looking, the average NHL game has about mid 40s shots on goal. Those teams had shot almost 70 shots on goal in regulation of the first two games. So they're shooting, almost double the number of shots that you'd have, because once the puck's bouncing, there's so many opportunities for that errant puck to flip in. And I think about with jiu-jitsu, how is that going to start changing the game as people get nerdier and nerdier about this? Like, are there certain positions where people are only going to go for this position? I'm only going to work past to side control, and then I'm never going to give up side control, because that's a very low percentage of getting swept, and it's a really high percentage of me being able to get a submission out of it. And then if anything happens, I'm just going to jump up and disengage and reset, because I think I can hit my pass and get to side control. Like, I think everybody says, the NBA has been ruined by analytics. I just writing this and thinking about jiu-jitsu, I wonder if that's the next wave of competition jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, like actually that kind of takes me back to the Pacers and Knicks in game one. When you talk about the 3-pointers, the Knicks, they did everything they needed to do. It's just the Pacers kept putting up 3-pointers and kept putting up 3-pointers. The Knicks weren't messing up. They're making their shots, but they're only making 2s. And every time the Pacers came down, they were making 3s. So yeah, that definitely we saw that play out in real time right there with the Knicks versus Pacers, and just in general, them trying to run with the Pacers and trying to keep up with the Pacers in that regard. I mean, we saw it also in the series before when New York played Boston. Boston was going for all the 3s, and they just weren't falling for them. This was the time where it backfired on the team a little bit. But the Pacers made it work. And, especially in game one, people are saying that the Knicks choked, but the Knicks did everything they could do. They're scoring. It's just that Indiana was scoring that one extra point each time back down.
And maybe that's what will save jiu-jitsu, is analytics plays out over a season or over a series. Even though it might fail you in one game, it's going to it's going to win over the aggregate of the whole season.
Yeah.
In jiu-jitsu, when you have single elimination matches in a tournament, you're done if you're playing the analytics game and, your percentages don't play that one match, you're not going forward. So maybe that'll be the difference that saves it, because like NFL, we're seeing it with going for two, going for it on fourth down. There are some games that are lost on that, but over the course of your season, you're going to win more games off it than the games you're going to lose. Now, if football was single elimination and you're done for the rest of the season, maybe people would be, a little more conservative with that. But fortunately it's not.
Well, as a Lions fan, trust me, I'm very, very aware of the risks that come with it, but the rewards that also come with it. And, it's just one of those things. I think in jiu-jitsu though, you think about something like grappler industries, where you have kind of a round robin type thing, multiple matches, you can kind of play with that a little bit, I guess there. Whereas, IBJJF, like I said, single elimination, there's not a lot of room for your risk. You're going with what will work. And I guess, I guess in a broader picture, but like you said, like, let's say, there's a scenario where like you might have to disengage, but you can pass the guard. So, you're going to go ahead and get those points for the pass. I guess there's a little bit of play there for it, but who knows? Like, I know the UFC just announced their UFC or their BJJ thing upcoming. I'm not sure, what it entails, because with jiu-jitsu, there's so many different leagues, I guess. And which one's the right one? Which one's the best one? CJI, everybody loved. The atmosphere was great. Having the bowl seemed to be really cool. We have ADCC, still out there. UFC's doing their thing, IBJJF, NAGA, but a lot of these different organizations, you don't really get a lot of room to play with the analytics in one swoop, at least. This is some stuff that, like, over time, you kind of go back, look at your film, or look at your opponent's film as well, and see, what's your best thing. I know at our gym, we have a lot of grapplers that, they do just that. It's like, I have this one thing and this one thing only that works. They can transition to other stuff, but it's like, this is my bread and butter. And I'm going to make it work no matter what. And some folks do it to a detriment. It's like, I know this is going to work, and they keep going for it, and it doesn't work. And it's what costs them sometimes. So,
where that analytics mindset, I think, can help some of the newer grapplers is some of the frustration that they have going for submissions and other things. Like, somebody has you mounted, your arms kind of up there. They go to, try an arm bar, but, their foot's not all the way over and their knees aren't really together and they don't really have a good grip. So it's really easy to pull your elbow. And then all of a sudden you transition, you have them in side control. So they went from being in this awesome mount position and then having one arm controlled where they could really set something up, to just by, throwing that really sloppy submission. There you're doing a really low percentage thing that has a very high percentage chance of you ending up in a bad position out of it. And if you can take a moment and just pause when you're rolling and thinking, okay, I'm in a great spot. I'm not going to leave this great spot unless I'm 99% sure that it's going to be a submission. And then once you have that mentality, then when the arm comes up, it's like, oh no, I'm not just going to jump up immediately and try to arm bar. I'm going to flatten this across. I'm going to grab it with my other hand. I'm going to get a Kimura grip on this. I'm going to get my knee high to their ear. Maybe I'm going to take this into S mount. Maybe I'm going to really squeeze the whole time on this Kimura grip until I have both of my legs pulled over, my knees are tight, and now I'm taking the armbar back in the Kimura grip where there's no way for them to hitchhiker out of it. There's no way for them to pull their elbow back. And the only difference in that first option where you lose the submission, you lose the position, and you end up in side control versus the one where you're in the same position, you get full control, and then you get a full control submission. The only difference in that is your mindset. And so I think like that's something that I'm trying to talk to people about.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I guess that does play again into the drilling. The drilling and really slowing down and having the confidence. That's part of the mindset, knowing like, okay, I got this here. When we talk about the higher percentages, like I said earlier, I'm more comfortable with somebody on my back. But I mean, you got somebody's back. That's, kind of the highest percentage right there. You got their back, more than likely you're getting that choke. Unless they got a little short, stubby neck, and, they can't be. But there's always something. But, as the game continues to grow and change, I mean, I think that's definitely, a great way for newer grapplers, especially, to look at it. It's just, comfort too, like if you, like you mentioned earlier, if you've got mounts, there's not a whole lot you have there. Your percentages aren't that great, compared to like me being able to get out of there, being able to make frames and kind of get to half guard, or maybe bump and then, kind of go for a roll or something. Maybe the percentages, might be 60-40, but, there's always room, to kind of play with these things in jiu-jitsu and expand on it, especially.
Always room, always a chance to get better. Unfortunately, there are a lot of days where you get worse. But I just hope all the new people that come in for their first day or their first couple days, their first couple weeks, understand that there are going to be a lot of times when you're worse. There are going to be a lot of days where it feels like you're not learning anything, you're not getting anything out of this, but it just takes time. And people at every level are feeling that at different points, throughout their time training.
Yeah, it's like they say, it's a marathon. Like you can't come in there and expect like, you're not getting good in 6 months. Doesn't mean anything. 6 months. Like you're not supposed to be an expert in 6 months. I mean, if you go in there in 6 months and you're whipping up on everybody, I don't know.
You're a prodigy.
Maybe
enjoy it.
You're the greatest thing ever. I mean, or I don't know. Maybe you're doing some extra instruction on the side and, the other folks aren't training. But whatever it is, the expectation isn't that you're going to go out there and become the greatest in a short period of time. So, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I wanted to ask you real quick because I had been thinking about it earlier. I know you surf.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to kind of get an idea. So you're doing jiu-jitsu before surfing or surfing before jiu-jitsu?
No, I only started surfing a couple years ago when I lived in Honolulu. I'd done some ocean sports before that, but that's where I really got into surfing seriously.
Okay. Were you able to, once you really got into it, kind of translate anything you learned out there surfing back to the mats?
That's a good question, Dante, because I actually think that they're completely different. And we need to think about also surfing in Hawaii. Is crazy that was kind of the first place I learned to surf. And then I surfed at some really high level breaks there. Surfing is the only sport where you can't tap out. There's no quitting, and it comes at you so quickly. So you can be up on a wave, everything's perfect, and then there's a little bump in it, or it flutters, or it breaks where you didn't expect it was going to break. And all of a sudden you get hit harder than any takedown you've ever had at jiu-jitsu. You get dragged under, tossed so hard that I've popped up like feeling my arms and legs to like see if they're attached, because like I literally didn't know if like my arms and legs came off. And you get drilled down, taken underwater, held hard enough that it blows all the air out of your lungs. And there's no quitting. Like, you can't tap then. There's nobody who's going to come help you in that moment. It is entirely on you to get out of that situation before the next wave is going to come. And I've had a situation that was awful where the waves in Hawaii come in sets, and the sets might be 20 or 30 minutes apart. And if there's a crowd, people are kind of moving around, and if you have to balance which wave you're going to go on, because it's one person at a time. So a lot of times, if the first wave in the set comes in and you're in the right spot and nobody else is, you just go for it. But if you miss, or if you fall on that, every single wave after that in the set is going to land right on your head. So I had one of those situations, really bad, wipe out, flipped over, thrown down at the bottom, held against the bottom, came back up. I can finally kind of see light. Like, I need a breath so bad. And this second, like, my eyes come above the water, there's another wave crashing right on my head, like a solid, like 15-foot wave. And you're going through the whole thing again. And then I got out of that. And this is where it comes back to jiu-jitsu. You've had like the fight of your life. You think you're about to die. You think like the world's ending. You want to quit all of these. And then you look around and nobody else even knows that it happens. Like, there are kids playing on the beach. There are other people. There's somebody else on the next wave. This experience was entirely personal to you. And I think that's kind of jiu-jitsu in the same way that you can get absolutely crushed during a roll. Like, you can have the worst roll ever. You can have somebody who shouldn't beat you, like, just completely destroy you. Ultimately, that experience is like just in your head. There was nobody else around the gym that was really paying attention to you. That person you were with, they're thinking about themselves and how well they were doing. They're not thinking about you sucking. So I think a lot of these experiences that can either be so traumatic or difficult, we've got to realize that we're the only one that's having it, and we're the only one who's judging ourselves based on it. So I don't think jiu-jitsu really helped me in surfing, but surfing, I think, was a good reminder that so much of this stuff just lives in your own head.
Yeah, that is a good thing. Just kind of think of it that way, because there are times I get my ass kicked and I'm looking around like, everybody just saw me get my ass beat, but nobody cares. They're doing their own thing. That's this actually came to mind last week. We went camping out at St. Island, and we're on the beach looking at the waves. They weren't massive waves, but they're bigger waves than I've ever really seen. And it got me thinking about surfing, and it reminded me like, David Riedman, he surfs, and my wife, we were talking about just, the waves out there and just looking at the kids playing. I was like, it was like, I wonder how that connects, because I know a lot of folks out in California surf and do jiu-jitsu. It was like, how do they connect? And, do they connect in any way?
Yeah. Same in Hawaii. There's a huge jiu-jitsu and surf community out there, and it helps for the fitness point. Like, I think if you're surfing in the way one of my friends in Hawaii described it, there are waves and there are waves of consequence. And a wave of consequence is one that'll kill you. And so if you're surfing waves of consequence, you need to be in really good physical condition where you're able to paddle, you're able to hold your breath for a minute, you're able to recover quickly when you're in a really bad situation, you're able to paddle out of a current, You're able to help other people if they get into a bad spot. And the Hawaii spots aren't like, the East Coast beaches. One of the places that I surfed there a lot was 3/4 of a mile offshore. So you're paddling for like a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes just to get out to the break. So, you're on your own out there. There's no lifeguard. There's nobody on the beach, who can even see you. You're just like they can see your little board way out there. So in those situations, people are running, doing jiu-jitsu, doing HIIT workouts, doing beach workouts, doing swimming. There was a bay that was a half mile across. And when it was a flat day, when there were no waves, I would just swim laps across this bay out there, so that you're just constantly getting cardio. So I think jiu-jitsu is really popular with that high level surf community, because it's one more way to be both physically and mentally engaged in something that's really taking your attention and focus to kind of be in the game with it.
That makes sense. I connected now.
But surfing is so much scarier than jiu-jitsu. Like,
oh yeah,
I'm never scared again in a roll ever, and it makes your passing a lot better. Like if your balance is good on a board, especially on bigger waves where you're skipping around or you have to drop down the face, your pass is going to be so much cleaner, because you're used to just touching off your toes and immediately dropping your hip and dropping your weight right into it, because that's the motion of dropping into a larger wave. Is you just have to trust that your toes are connecting, and then have the weight of your hip be what kind of carries you and locks you into to kind of catching the wave.
Okay. Nice.
You ever want to come out, Dante? We'll go to Cocoa Beach. It'll be 1 foot waves. You can stand up if you need to. It'll be a foam board. There'll be zero risk. We'll get you and your daughter and wife out there. Have a blast.
My daughter would definitely be like, I want to do it. Like, take me out there. My wife, not so much. I get out there. I'd give it a try. But like, I always joke that one of my favorite movies is Point Break.
Oh, that's a classic.
And my wife always was like, you love that movie, but like, you've never been surfing. It's like, that's not the point. Like, first off, Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves, Gary Busey, like Lori Petty. It all works like that somehow they made that all work. Number one.
Yeah, that movie is incredible. That has not aged a minute.
Exactly. I mean, I always say that Fast and Furious was much better when it was Point Break. Like, that's basically what it is. The same concept. And I always kind of like think about that in jiu-jitsu terms, not Robin Banks, but like,
well, if you need a surfing movie to get you, pumped for jiu-jitsu, you'll laugh about this, Dante. I guarantee, because we're close to the same age, so you might have seen this in theaters for like summer camp or something. Best surfing movie ever made, Blue Crush.
I knew you were going to say it.
Hands down, best surfing movie ever made.
Like I remember when it came out, I was like, I was interested in, because again, surfing, I'm always interested in the ideal of surfing, but it's like I've never done it. Like whenever there's any movie that comes out that involves surfing, which isn't a whole hell of a lot, but it's like, it catches my eye. I'm like, what's that? So, who knows? Maybe we'll have to make that a thing. I mean, but if I'm coming down to visit, I'm obviously like, hey, so where are the mats? Let's get on those.
You check out Orlando BJJ, check out Disney World, check out the new Universal, the new Epic theme park. And all of that's only an hour away from Cocoa Beach. Have a nice beach day. Your wife can sit at the tiki bar that's on the pier there. You're surfing right underneath. We'll put this together, Dante.
We'll make
maybe start a GoFundMe for the Off the Mats and BJJ Wiki vacation fund.
Hey, I'm not opposed to it. I've got some money making ideals.
Well, you deserve it. I mean, you've given so much to the jiu-jitsu community through everything you post online, through this podcast, through the platform that you give to different people, the way that you get people connected with it. So, you deserve that trip at some point.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those words. I appreciate that. Sometimes I feel like I'm just doing my thing. I just want people to, enjoy jiu-jitsu, at least the way I see it. Put techniques out there, put memes out there, put information out there, whatever content, and have conversations. So thank you for that.
Yeah, keep it up, my man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And before we get out of here, David, shout outs, mentions, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, people check out the Rules of BJJ Substack. So all the content is free. There are a number of articles on there. The first day guide for beginners, gym etiquette, why you suck at rolling, how to not be the asshole in the gym, some early thoughts on BJJ analytics. And then I'm going to throw up some podcast content on there as well. And all of these articles, I know people hear article and it sounds boring, it sounds like text, but any points where it's making a point, I have a lot of GIFs in there of different moves. So like, these are your high percentage positions. These are your low percentage positions. These are your first day warm-up exercises. Links to, where to get basic equipment, things like that. None of it's sponsored. There's no, financial goal in any of this. I think that, I just turned 40. I've been in this for a minute and I want to do some things to kind of give back to the next generation in this and help more people get involved and help more people have a better first day.
Good. And we appreciate that in this community. So thank you for what you do as well. And as always, to the listeners, thank you. If y'all have any questions, concerns, criticisms, anything, feel free to reach out. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram and Off the Mats Podcast also on Instagram. I want to shout out our crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio, Bobby, Chris, Joe, Maryland Phil, Ricky, Tiki, Farrell, all the crew over there. Thank you. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be podcasting. So thank you to those guys. Also want to shout out my other podcast. So you like horror? If you like scary movies, go check it out. We just put out the Get Out episode. The Nosferatu episode should be close behind that. And we're going to actually be doing pretty soon 28 years later, since that's going to be hitting theaters. Or it might be in theaters by the time you guys hear this. Who knows? But we're going to be doing an episode on that as well. The whole 28 days, 28 weeks, and 28 years later trilogy. Guess there's a new trilogy coming though too. There are going to be 2 more after the newest. But go check out those scary things if you like scary movies. So you like horror. All the words separated by underscores on Instagram, and you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts, especially podcasts like this. And last but not least, I want to give a big shout out here to our guest today, Mr. David Riedman. Thank you so much, David, for making the time to record with me. It's like I asked you the other day, and I was thinking like, oh man, you might need a couple of weeks. But when you're like, hey, we can do this Sunday, I was like, word, all right, that quick turnaround. So thank you for making the time and just sitting here having a conversation and sharing your knowledge and information with us and the listeners. So thank you very much for that.
For sure, Dante. And hearing you lay out the horror podcast stuff, we got one more movie to throw in there. It's going to be 28 seconds later. It's the experience of the first day white belt, where you make it 28 seconds and you're done. So we'll leave it with that. Great to talk to you.
Might have to write something down for that. I like that idea. All right. Thank you. And to you guys, the listeners, you know what it is. You guys keep listening. And we're going to definitely keep making these shows. Thank you, everybody. And goodbye.
Deepen with it. Now let me sing a song.